So I want you to just picture this for a second. It is a freezing December night in Wisconsin. The year is 1989.
Oh man, Wisconsin in December is no joke.
Right. It is absolutely bitterly cold. And you are 19 years old, you're curled up in your dorm room in Milwaukee, and you are just completely safe from the biting cold outside.
Just kind of cozying up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're watching the Nutcracker with your roommate,
Yeah.
just soaking in that whole holiday spirit. The room is warm, it's quiet, and then, out of nowhere, the landline rings.
Which, back then a late night landline call is always a little startling.
Totally. So you pick it up, it's your brother-in-law, Tracy. And his voice is just, it's tight, very tense. And he asks you this really bizarre question. He says, "Is Carrie with you?"
And to really understand how terrifying that specific question is, you have to look at who Carrie actually is.
Right.
Because Carrie is your 32-year-old sister. She's a mother to a 3-year-old girl. She works this really steady, very demanding job in public relations for a sporting goods company.
Yes, she's not a teenager.
Exactly. A woman with those kinds of serious responsibilities, she does not just spontaneously drop by a college dorm room, an hour away from her home in Burlington without calling first. I mean, she just doesn't.
And that one tense, just completely illogical phone call, it kicks off this baffling, surreal mystery. So today's deep dive is about Carrie O'Brien Kruger, a mother who just seemingly vanished into the winter dawn.
It really is one of the most frustrating cases I've ever looked at.
Oh, it's wild.
Yeah.
Because we are stepping right into the shoes of criminal investigators today. To untangle this whole thing, we've been looking through a massive stack of source material. We're talking decades-old police reports, forensic psychiatric evaluations, and all these archival case files.
Yeah, the paper trail is just huge.
It is. And we're examining a story that is just riddled with forged documents, phantom crime scenes, and a primary suspect who claims his memory of the entire decade was simply wiped clean.
And I think what's so fascinating here is that, well, while a lot of missing persons cases feature this frustrating lack of physical evidence, right? This one features something much more insidious.
Yeah.
It features this impossible, just totally broken timeline. A timeline that, frankly, seems deliberately designed to misdirect investigators from day one.
Right, like an intentional maze.
Exactly. We are basically trying to untangle a masterful web of physical and psychological misdirection.
So let's start with the anatomy of that timeline, because it's a lot. Tracy's version of events from that Tuesday night is packed with these extremely specific details. Can you just kind of walk us through the story he originally gave to police?
Yeah, so according to Tracy, on Tuesday, December 5th, Carrie gets a call around 8:30 p.m., and he claims it was her manager, a guy named Jim.
Okay.
So Carrie allegedly hangs up the phone and tells Tracy that she has to, fill in for someone at a trade show in Wyoming, and she has to leave the very next day. Jim is supposedly going to drive them to Chicago for this super early morning flight.
Right, like a sudden work emergency.
Exactly. So Tracy then says that by 4.0 or 4.30 the next morning, which is Wednesday, Carrie gets up in the pitch dark, gives him a kiss goodbye, reminds him to take care of their daughter, and then she just leaves.
But the very foundation of that story, it just crumbles a few hours later. Because mid-morning on Wednesday, Tracy gets a message from Jim, the manager.
The guy who's supposedly called the night before.
Right. And Jim is super confused. He's asking where Carrie is because she has pulled a no-call, no-show at work for the very first time in her entire life.
Which is a huge red flag for someone like her.
Totally. So Tracy plays dumb. He acts all surprised and says, "Well, she went with you to Wyoming." And that is when Jim drops the bombshell. There is no trade show in Wyoming.
Wow.
Yeah. Plus, Carrie's actual job is tracking these trade shows for the company. She would have known immediately that a Wyoming trip was entirely fictional.
See, when investigators hear a story that falls apart this quickly, they immediately pivot to the physical environment. Like what does the crime scene tell us? Or in this case, the lack of one.
Yeah, what was missing?
Well, when Carrie's family eventually searches the house, they find that her purse and her ID are gone. Which, on the surface, that suggests a voluntary departure. She packed up and left.
Sure, yeah.
But the illusion breaks completely when you look at what she left behind. So she's supposedly packed for a December trip to Wyoming, right?
Right.
Yet the heavy, insulated lining of her winter coat is still hanging in the closet. She only took the thin outer shell.
In December, for a trip to Wyoming.
Exactly. It makes zero sense. She also left her brand new makeup. Her wedding ring was just sitting in a little dish on the dresser, and most crucially, her stomach medication was left behind.
Oh, wow. I mean, didn't she have chronic pain?
Yeah, she had been suffering from these severe, unexplained stomach pains for like a year and a half. A chronic pain sufferer does not leave for a surprise cross-country trip without their medication.
No, absolutely not. That's the first thing you pack.
Mhm.
And the packing story itself, it just keeps shifting too. Like, Tracy initially claims she packed his big brown suitcase,
Right.
but when Carrie's sister points out that the brown suitcase is visibly sitting right there in the attic, like, you can just see it, Tracy immediately backpedals and says, oh wait, she took a different one.
Just making it up on the fly.
Literally. And then there's the money. Tracy claims Carrie took $500 cash from a hidden emergency stash they kept in a basement air duct. But when police finally search the house, they go looking for this air duct, and it doesn't exist.
Wait, there was no air duct.
There is no air duct in that basement at all. It's like an actor reading from a script, but he completely forgot to check if the stage props were actually built on the set.
That is wild. And worse than failing to check his props, he completely flubbed his lines. If you really want to see the fatal flaw in Tracy's story, you have to look at how he constructs his timeline.
What do you mean?
Well, he was working backward from Wednesday morning to create this whole fiction, but he made a massive chronological error.
Okay, lay it on me.
Tracy's own father told the police that Tracy casually mentioned Carrie's Wyoming trip to him on Monday, December 4th. That is a full 24 hours before Carrie supposedly received that surprise 8:30 p.m. phone call on Tuesday night.
Oh my God, he pre-planted the alibi before the inciting incident even happened.
Exactly. It proves total premeditation. The Tuesday night phone call wasn't some sudden change of plans. It was a completely fabricated event that Tracy had already decided was going to happen.
Just think about that for a second. Think about the last time someone told you a lie that was so massive, just so easily disprovable that you almost believed it just because of the sheer audacity of it. That is what these investigators were facing.
Because this wasn't just a normal bad marriage?
No, it was a psychological pressure cooker, and Tracy was the one actively turning up the heat. Carrie already suspected he was cheating. They were drowning in financial problems.
And Tracy used these incredibly dramatic falsehoods to escape accountability in, like, every single aspect of his life.
Yeah, I mean, when Carrie confronted him about his behavior and just begged him to go to marriage counseling with her, do you know what he said? He told her he couldn't go because he had a terminal brain tumor.
Which was completely made up.
A complete, unadulterated lie.
And that's not even the end of it. He was also padding his work time cards. He secretly bought a brand new Ford pickup truck, and investigators later found really strong evidence suggesting he forged Carrie's signature on the loan paperwork.
I mean, the guy is just constantly manipulating the narrative. He was always trying to control how everyone perceived reality.
Yeah, he even tried to lay the groundwork for a tragic narrative before she disappeared. He suggested she cancel a doctor's appointment by claiming she was out of town.
Right, and he actually handed police a note, supposedly written by Carrie's doctor, claiming she was being treated for severe depression and might be suicidal.
Just handing them this fake evidence.
Yeah. But when the police finally bothered to go check with that specific doctor, the doctor looked at them and said, I never wrote that. I've never treated this woman for depression in my entire life.
It's just staggering. And all of this manipulation, all of these frantic, messy attempts to control the story, they culminate in a truly bizarre event exactly 1 month after Carrie vanished.
Right. January 5th.
Yeah.
So put yourself in the police waiting room that day. The walls are really closing in on Tracy. He had already taken one polygraph, which was ruled inconclusive.
Right. They couldn't get a clear reading.
So the investigators, they schedule a second one for January 5th. But Tracy never actually makes it into the room. He's at his workplace. He supposedly just glances at a newspaper article about his missing wife, and he just collapses.
Out cold.
Out cold.
And so he's rushed to the emergency room, right? The doctors run this whole battery of tests. They are checking for a stroke, checking for any physical trauma, any kind of neurological event. They find absolutely nothing physically wrong with him. Nothing. But when Tracy wakes up, he looks at the medical staff, and he claims that the year is 1979.
Wow.
He genuinely claims he believes he is a teenager.
So he just claims his memory of the entire 1980s has vanished into thin air.
Oof.
Con, which, you know, conveniently means he has no memory of meeting Carrie in 1982, no memory of their marriage, no memory of their 3-year-old daughter, and obviously, most importantly, no memory of December 5th, 1989.
And what's crazy is the initial medical staff actually diagnosed this as hysterical amnesia, which is, it's a real phenomenon known medically as a dissociative fugue state.
Okay, wait, how does that even work?
Well, to understand how it works biologically, just imagine a circuit breaker in a house. When a house is hit by a massive power surge, the breaker trips, right? It shuts off the electricity to prevent a catastrophic fire.
Right.
In real cases of severe unspeakable trauma, the human brain can act similarly. It essentially shuts down access to autobiographical memory to protect the psyche from completely shattering.
Okay, I have to stop you and push back hard on this.
Go for it.
Because I understand the biology of genuine trauma. But if Tracy is faking this specifically to avoid a murder charge, why wouldn't he just remember Carrie walking out the door?
I see what you're saying.
Right. Like if he suddenly just remembers seeing her get into a cab or walking down the street with a suitcase, that permanently solidifies his alibi. Why wipe the whole decade? It feels like the absolute nuclear option of lies.
You're entirely right to be skeptical, and that is precisely why the forensic psychiatrists who reviewed his records years later completely called out the deception.
Okay, thank goodness.
Yeah, they were like, a grown man does not simply factory reset his brain to avoid a polygraph test. But if you think about it strategically,
Okay.
wiping the whole decade is the ultimate defensive shield.
How so?
Because if he claims he remembers her walking out the door, skilled police interrogators will tear him apart on cross-examination. They'll say, what was she wearing? Which door did she use? What were her exact words? Did she take a cab? Who drove the cab?
Oh, I see.
But by erasing his memory entirely, he absolves himself of having to answer a single question. He turns himself into a victim. He forces everyone around him to nurture him and take care of him, rather than interrogate him.
That is deeply, deeply manipulative. But with a suspect putting up an impenetrable psychological shield like that, you would expect the police to just pivot entirely to hard physical evidence. Like, let the science do the talking.
You would hope so.
But this is exactly where the local police completely dropped the ball. The investigative fumbles in the early days of this case are just staggering.
Yeah, it's a classic example of how early cognitive bias can corrupt a crime scene. Some investigators seemingly bought into that suicidal wife who walked away narrative, which just drained all the urgency from the case.
And the physical evidence just suffered because of it.
Oh, terribly. For instance, detectives found a very suspicious red, sandy residue scraped onto the interior ceiling of Tracy's new Ford pickup truck. They actually scraped it and collected it. But then a detective literally threw it in the trash before it could be tested by the independent soil expert Carrie's family had hired.
Threw it in the trash. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't make this stuff up. And the really strong rumor circulating at the time was that this specific detective was actually a close friend of Tracy's family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But the negligence doesn't stop there. Months later, deputies in a neighboring county discovered these bloody men's pajamas riddled with bullet holes, just discarded out in a field about 16 miles away.
And Carrie's sister saw photos of them, right?
Yes, she saw the photos and said it looked exactly like something they owned. So what happened to that evidence? It was lost.
It's lost.
No record of blood typing, no forensic testing. The physical items just vanished from police custody.
Which creates this massive vacuum of physical evidence.
Yeah.
And honestly, whenever there is an investigative vacuum, chaos just rushes in. And in this case, that chaos took the form of Philip Andrew Fox.
Oh, man. The monster next door. If you wrote this guy into a thriller, a publisher would reject it for being too over the top. Philip lived just a few doors down from Carrie and Tracy, and he was a 48-year-old violent felon who was out on parole.
And his record was horrifying.
Oh, back in the 60s, he shot and killed his own uncle. He abducted a teenager. He shot a gas station attendant. And when he moved into Carrie's quiet little neighborhood, he was actively the prime suspect in the murder of his own wife over in Ohio.
I mean, he was impossible to ignore. He walked around the neighborhood in these loud three-piece suits, wearing heavy ornate rings on every single finger.
Like a movie villain?
Exactly. But his wardrobe wasn't what alarmed his parole officer. It was his behavior on the exact night Carrie vanished, December 5th.
Right. Because Philip suddenly flees town that night. He tells his parole officer he has a sudden family emergency in Virginia. But then his story shifts to a business deal in Ohio. He just bounces around multiple states for months.
It's incredibly suspicious.
Yeah. And years later, when cold case investigators from Racine County finally take over, they realize they have a known killer who lived on the exact same street as a missing woman, who fled on the exact same night.
So what do?
They track Philip down to a prison in West Virginia, where he is serving time for arson. And they offer him the holy grail of legal deals.
They really did. They literally slide an offer across the table. They tell him, look, if you tell us where Carrie is, we will give you total immunity for anything related to her disappearance, and we will drop your current arson and fraud charges.
That's a get-out-of-jail-free card.
A literal get-out-of-jail-free card. Most guilty men sitting in a prison cell would take that in a heartbeat. But Philip refuses. He looks the investigators dead in the eye and insists, I didn't kill her. I don't know where she is.
Wait, I am really struggling with this part. You are telling me a literal killer lived on our street, fled town the exact same night she vanished, and we are supposed to believe that's just a coincidence. I mean, that feels way too convenient for Tracy.
It is incredibly convenient, and it really highlights a core tension in criminal investigations, which is figuring out the difference between a coincidence and a smokescreen.
Right.
Investigators had to weigh the totality of the circumstances here. On one side, yes, you have Philip Fox, a known predator.
Very scary guy.
But on the other side, you have a husband with an impossible timeline, a pre-planted alibi, a history of forging documents, and a sudden, highly suspicious case of amnesia right before a polygraph test.
Yeah, that list is pretty damning.
It is. So based on the overwhelming behavioral evidence against Tracy, investigators strongly concluded that Philip Fox was just a terrifying coincidence. His presence simply provided this chaotic smokescreen that muddied the waters for years.
Which really forces us to look at the devastating long-term ripple effects of Tracy's actions. Because if you fast forward through the decades, Tracy raises his and Carrie's daughter, Megan. And he feeds this little girl an incredibly cruel narrative. He tells her that her mother was cold, that she didn't care about her, that she simply walked out on them because she was tired of being a mother.
It breaks your heart. And the environment Megan was raised in is just deeply unsettling. Tracy eventually moved them away from Burlington, and they landed on the exact same property as the very therapist who originally validated Tracy's amnesia.
Are you serious?
Yeah. This therapist essentially became a surrogate family member. So Megan grew up completely isolated in this carefully constructed echo chamber where her father was always the tragic victim and her missing mother was the villain.
But the truth is stubborn, right? It refuses to stay buried forever. So we get to 2013, and Carrie's case is finally transferred to the Racine County Sheriff's Office. Real resources and real forensic science are finally brought in.
Finally.
And they managed to track down Tracy's old Ford pickup truck, the exact same one he secretly bought back in the 80s. And they bring in Taser.
Oh, Taser is amazing.
Tell us about Taser.
So Taser is a highly trained cadaver dog. And, people often wonder how a dog can smell anything on a metal truck after 24 years. It sounds impossible.
It really does.
Like, how does that work? Well, the science of canine olfaction is astounding. A dog's nose has hundreds of millions of scent receptors compared to our 5 million. And when human remains decompose, they release these specific chemical compounds, volatile organic compounds, that can actually seep into porous materials like upholstery.
Okay.
And they even settle into the microscopic grooves of metal and plastic. These molecules, they don't just wash away in the rain. So when they bring Taser around that old truck, the dog doesn't hesitate for a second.
No.
He circles the vehicle and alerts incredibly strongly right at the front wheel well.
And he actually alerts 3 separate times on that truck. So because of that, investigators bring the dogs into the old Kruger house. And the dogs alert on the stairs. They alert in the basement. Suddenly, this dormant cold case is just crackling with electricity.
You can just feel the momentum shifting.
Oh, absolutely. And then a chilling tip comes across the desk. It's a tip originally reported way back in 1991, but it was completely brushed off by the original detectives.
Yeah, this tip came from a flooring contractor. He remembered being called out to the Kruger house to lay carpet in the basement right around the time Carrie vanished.
Okay.
And when he gets down there, he notices something highly, highly unusual. Right smack in the middle of the concrete floor is a fresh, wet patch of concrete.
Just a patch.
Yeah, and it's 3 feet by 6 feet.
The exact dimensions of a human grave.
Exactly. And Tracy is hovering over him, acting incredibly nervous, aggressively rushing the contractor to just get the carpet laid over it quickly.
What was his excuse for the wet concrete?
Tracy claims the fresh concrete is for drainage. But this contractor, he knows basic construction. Drain tiles run along the perimeter walls. They do not go in a perfect rectangle in the dead center of a room.
So the Racine investigators realize they might finally have the exact location. They secure a search warrant. They bring ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, down into the Kruger basement. So for those who don't know, how exactly does GPR determine what's under solid concrete?
So ground-penetrating radar works by firing these high-frequency radio waves into the Earth. When those waves travel through solid, uniform dirt or concrete, they move at a steady speed.
Right.
But if they hit an anomaly like a buried object or even a void in the dirt where soil was dug up and then loosely replaced, the waves bounce back to the surface differently.
So it maps the disruption.
Exactly. The radar machine reads that disruption and maps it out. So they scan the concrete floor looking for that 3x6 disruption. They scan the entire basement. And the radar shows absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
The ground beneath the concrete is completely solid and undisturbed.
So they are stunned. The investigators actually bring that original contractor back to the house. They walk him down the stairs into the basement. They point to the floor and they say, "Look, we scanned it. There is nothing here. Show us where you laid that carpet."
And what does he do?
The contractor just stands there. He looks around the room, taking in the walls, the whole layout. He shakes his head and he says, "This isn't the basement I worked in."
Which raises a profoundly disturbing question. If he didn't lay that carpet over a fresh grave in the Kruger house, whose house was he in?
Right.
Tracy had to have taken him to a completely different property. But where?
It is absolutely surreal. To this day, investigators possess a sketch of this phantom basement drawn entirely from the contractor's memory. It has concrete on one side, carpet on the other. The stairs are in the far corner, tucked right next to a washer, dryer, and sink. And that fresh 3x6 patch is right on the carpeted half.
But this layout, it doesn't match the Kruger house, it doesn't match Tracy's parents' house, it doesn't match any known relative's house that they've searched.
And that phantom basement isn't the only cryptic clue they're left holding. Remember, Tracy's entire alibi hinges on that Tuesday night phone call from Carrie's manager.
Right, the 8:30 p.m. call.
Exactly. Investigators actually possessed the late 80s Wisconsin Bell phone bills that could definitively prove whether that call ever happened. But they can't read them.
Yeah, because the billing codes on these documents read like undecipherable hieroglyphics.
Why is that? Like, how can a phone bill be unreadable?
Because before modern area codes unified the national telecom grid, these rural phone companies used fragmented, hyper-local zoning codes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, these codes were entirely unique to specific municipal boundaries, and they were really only understood by the switchboard operators and billing clerks who worked at that specific branch at that specific time.
So they're just completely obsolete.
Totally. Unless someone out there who worked for Wisconsin Bell in 1989 steps forward to decode those specific zoning ciphers, that physical proof just remains locked away in plain sight.
It's a case suspended in time, just anchored by physical evidence that investigators can see but can't fully comprehend or locate.
It really is.
Which brings us back to you, the listener. We walk through the world every single day. We step over concrete floors, we walk through basements, and we just assume they are foundations.
Just cold, boring, empty space.
We really do take the physical spaces around us entirely for granted, assuming their history is exactly what it appears to be.
But I want you to think about this as you go about your week. Somewhere out there, perhaps in a house currently occupied by an unsuspecting family, maybe even a family who just moved in, sits a 3x6-foot concrete slab. It's in a basement with the stairs in the corner, a washer and dryer tucked right beside them.
It's out there somewhere.
How well do you really know the history of the ground beneath your own feet? Could the final resting place of a decades-old mystery be hidden in plain sight, just waiting for someone to finally recognize the layout of a room?